Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me for part 2 of my interview with Anastasia Wesselink Moellering. This is one of the most fascinating conversations that I've had with anybody, just because Anastasia, like I said in the previous video, she brings a new awareness and almost a new vocabulary and sort of fills in the blanks to some of those questions that we all want the answers to, like, why are we here? What is the point of this physical life? And what about evil? All of these tough questions I ask her in this interview. I will have part 1 of our discussion linked in the description, where she actually shares her near-death experience. I will also have all of Anastasia's links to her TikTok and her website in the description so that you can get in touch with her. Thank you for watching. Here's Anastasia. I believe you said that you grew up in an agnostic or atheist household, and I'm interested if your views on God or religion have changed since your experience.
I would say my views have radically changed, but they're actually changing, I think, more on a day-to-day basis now than if I look back in my life. So I was raised by an atheist, and we did not have any type of belief in my household. It was more about I was taught to be a good person. I was taught to be honest. I was taught to treat people with kindness and respect, not because of a consequence if I didn't, but because that's how we treat people. And so I was brought up with morals and with, values, but it wasn't in the context of religion. Fast forward to my 20s, and I got married in my first marriage, and my then husband's family was a pastor's family. And so he was a pastor's kid. His dad is a pastor. And I was basically thrown into Christianity in a very direct way because of my experience with family and doing different events with the family. And that didn't fit well for me for a lot of reasons. And later on, I started having some things that I was experiencing that I just could not explain. I was having precognitive dreams. I was having out-of-body experiences. And these were things that I knew nothing about. I didn't know about any of these concepts, but they were happening to me. And because they were happening to me, I wanted to know why. So I went on like a deep exploration of other experiences and reading books and trying to build a vocabulary for that experience because I just didn't have one. And then fast forward into my 30s, and my then husband and I got divorced, and I really found myself more in spirituality. And so I explored that because it seemed to me that there was something about the experience of going to church and a God and that I was gravitating to, that I felt there was a connection for me at the time, but it didn't fit for me to put it inside of a religious box. And so I was looking for what did fit for me. And spirituality was something I dabbled in for a while in my 30s, but it seemed to me that spirituality came with a lot of, at least from the part that I had exposure to, came with a lot of mysticism, and that didn't fit for me. And so I was really looking for, why are we here? And interestingly enough, I feel like with my experience that I had, I got that answer. It's almost as if that was something within me that I just so deeply wanted to know, that was the part that I connected with the strongest in my NDE, and was why I was able to bring that piece back. Now I feel like there is a part of us that is part of a greater energy, God, source. All these words carry so much different, dogma and beliefs tied to them. So it's hard to find just the right one, but there's a part of us, I feel like, that is a part of something bigger, and we can call it a God. I absolutely do not believe from my experience that I created the oneness that I was in. I would be so incredibly naive to think that, because it was so big. I was just a drop. I was a drop in this oneness. And so because I was a drop, that meant that everybody else was a drop too. But all together, we made this ocean of oneness that was in this void. But I felt very strongly that if any one of those drops didn't exist, then the entire void God oneness would not be able to exist. And so we are all, even though we can feel so small and inferior compared to something as big as the idea of a God or this oneness that I was in, even though we can feel so small in comparison, we are absolutely integral. It would be as if a single cog on a gear didn't exist. That gear couldn't work no matter how many cogs there were. It needs every single one of us. And we are all part of this together, which makes us all vitally important and worthy and part of this loving God source oneness that is out there that we're all a part of.
That's such an interesting and important point to me, to think that if a single one of us didn't exist, then God himself would not exist. It speaks a lot to some of the religious beliefs that we're taught that say that either somebody could be eternally separated from God or be annihilated. And it just seems like that's not possible. What are your thoughts on that?
From my experience, that seems to fit what I came back with. It's as if, so I've used this example before, and it's not a great example, so I'll preface that right away. But I've used this example where our physical bodies are kind of like a self-driving car.
Mhm.
And the physical body is wired completely to survive. It was programmed to learn about its environment as the body interacts with things in life. And with every interaction, with every learning, then the body understands what it needs to do to avoid risk and potential death, and also what it can do to seek pleasure and things that are enjoyable. And so with that in mind, it's as if our physical bodies have a mind of their own in that regard. And it is on autopilot. When the soul is in the physical body, attempting to drive the physical body, if you will, then the soul can become the driver when the car realizes that there's a driver. So it's as if we go through life in autopilot and then realize at some point, some people do, I suppose, maybe some people don't, that there's a part of us that's more than their physical body. And they begin to seek for that, and they find parts of it, and then they begin to bring that part into the physical body. It's as if all of the learnings that we have from the soul experience, so all the learnings we have here as a physical and the learnings we have in other soul experiences and other lives, all of that knowledge that we collect, I guess, is what contributes to the all-knowing that existed in that place of oneness. And so if you weren't having your experience, if I wasn't having my experience, if everybody wasn't having their experience, then that all-knowing couldn't exist, because that information wouldn't be available. And I'm using information as a very dry word. It's much more important than just data. We're not automatons, if you will. But it is as if it all has to be there. It all has to be part, or it just won't be complete.
I could go on a whole tangent here. It reminds me of the Sanskrit concept of God as being consciousness bliss, like God is eternally experiencing God's self.
It's interesting you say that, because I did at one point really feel strongly that God was not a noun, that God was a verb. And it feels to me that, this notion of that soul part of us is a feeling. More than anything, we understand it most directly as a feeling. At least I understand it most directly as a feeling. And feelings are not things. Feelings are fluid and dynamic, but they're also complete. You can't tell anybody that the feeling that they just had wasn't real. Because the most real thing any one person can experience is their true, authentic feelings.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What are your thoughts on evil? I believe I heard you say in your other interview that from God's perspective, evil doesn't exist, but maybe you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, I want to be really cautious that I don't use the word God in this context because it does have a lot of different connotations for different people.
Mhm.
So I will use the word the oneness because for me, that really reflects more of what my experience was without any of those other potential beliefs tied to it. So from my experience, when I got to the void or to the other side, everything that I had ever experienced in this lifetime didn't matter except for what I felt. My feelings were absolutely accessible, and it felt as if I could access the feeling of any situation I was in at any time. Now, since then, learning about life reviews and things of that nature, I didn't have a life review, not in the traditional sense like I've heard from other NDE stories, but it felt to me that I was in sort of this place where I could access a life review, where I could access every single feeling I had ever had and every single feeling that anybody who had interacted with me or that I knew about, I could access that as well there. And so it seems to me that the things that we feel here, our experiences, are what we take with us. And so if we experience ourselves in a dark way, like we experience ourselves in a traumatic way, we can access and recall that experience in that place if we want. But it's so different. It's not like here when we experience something painful, it's almost as if that experience recalls itself in our mind in a way that can trigger a fight or flight feeling. In that place, you can experience it, but you experience it with more objectivity, more detachment, more of it's pure, you feel it, but it isn't tied to all of the potential fear, because there's no fear there at all. It's more like it just is really the best way to put it. And so evil, the way I've come to understand evil since my experience, to me seems like it is the act of those who have denied completely the access to their soul. And through life experiences, through their own pain, trauma, biology, they have built up a disconnection to a degree that is outside of what maybe many people tend to experience as at least a partial connection to their soul. And because of that, they do not act from a place of connection and oneness. They act from a place of response with a pain that is so deep because that lack of connection is so painful that their actions and reactions on the outside we would call evil. From their perspective, it is an attempt to gain some sort of connection to something. And in the end, if any one of us had to feel what we would feel, what a person who we may call evil feels on the inside, it would be so crippling. I believe that it would take any person with an ounce of empathy to a different perspective about what do we do about people that we call evil. Because quite frankly, my thoughts are, if we were to truly try to bring more peace, love, and joy into this physical experience, if we were to try to create a heaven on earth, if you will, then it's not about eradicating those who we would call evil. It would be about providing the tools, the help, the care, and the love to help them build a connection. Keeping in mind that people who tend to get into that place probably didn't get there overnight. And there may be many, many factors, both nature and nurture, that contribute to somebody's what you would call an evil act. And so that could take generations to help support and undo. But ultimately, in the end, I didn't feel that there was good that there was bad, that there just was, and there were experiences and there were feelings. And when we get to the other side, we all come back together in one without any fear.
What are your thoughts on the hellish experiences that some people have?
That is very difficult to wrap my head around. And I think it plays also into the question of why does everybody have a different NDE? Now, there are common elements across many NDEs, and distressing NDEs, I think I read somewhere, account for no more than 5 or 10% of all reported NDEs. So the occurrence tends to be pretty small in comparison, but it still exists. So we have to acknowledge it. And I'm always cautious answering this question because I did not have a distressing NDE. And so I don't necessarily feel qualified to say what they are, why they exist, why somebody may have experienced them. I think there is an element of personal experience that happens in everybody's NDE. And so for those that have a distressing NDE, their personal reflection on their experience is going to be the best answer to that question than anybody on the outside looking in saying, well, my experience was really positive. Because as soon as I say that, I'm invalidating that other person's experience. And we've all have, just like we do in our physical lives. I might have a beautiful day and you may have a horrible day. But if all I do is talk about how great your day could be if you just changed or you just did things differently, I've just invalidated your entire experience. And so I think the keys to those experiences really have to be answered by those people that have had it.
I really, really appreciate your honesty, and I love that answer. So thank you. And my last question would be, what is the purpose of this life? And you've mentioned that our souls come here for the physical experience. What do you think we're trying to do here, or what are we doing here?
I really feel that we want to create in the physical, that we are ultimately creative beings. Our souls are immensely creative. And we want to experience creation here in a physical. We want to be able to create an experience that we want to have because we want to have the experience. And I've used this comparison before, and some people like it, and some people it really rubs them the wrong way. So if you're listening and this example rubs you the wrong way, I'm really sorry. But it's like when you go on a trip and you plan a vacation. You're planning a vacation not because you want to learn a lesson, not because you're attempting to gain some knowledge about something. You plan your trips because you want to have an experience. There's certain things you want to go see. You want to interact with things that you've never interacted with. You might want to go eat food you've never eaten before. You might want to see sights you've never seen before. You might want to go have time with somebody that is really precious and one-on-one with just the people that you're spending that trip with. And those reasons are at the heart of why we are here. We are here for the experience. And to discount that is to discount the very essence of what makes this life so beautiful.
Anastasia, would you like to talk for a few minutes about what you do and how people can get in contact with you?
Sure. So I am the owner of a holistic wellness studio in the suburbs of Chicago. We've been there for about 3 years now, and we work with people through a number of different holistic modalities, such as Reiki, coaching, fitness, nutrition coaching, sound therapy, meditation, reflexology. We really try to offer as many different types of services as possible. So that way, those that are looking for an integrative plan for their wellness, they can find a little bit of something that will help them on their journey through us. We also offer a lot of our services now online, simply because, like everybody, with the situation of the last couple of years, we've had to adjust like many businesses. But the silver lining of that is we are able to do a lot of the things online and help people who maybe aren't comfortable with coming out right now or going someplace with a one-on-one session. And then we also, so we offer all that through what we call our online sanctuary, and you can access on-demand videos and coaching and things that will really help you on your both wellness and spiritual journey. And we also, I personally do painting, and I do a lot of work with people one-on-one to help really see the beauty that that I feel is reflected of who they really are. And that can be found at the soulartboutique.com.
And I will have all of your links in the description, so please check them out if you're interested. Thank you so, so much for having this conversation with me. I've learned so much, and you have such a beautiful spirit and such an amazing way of putting things into words. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share this with you.